Hi, this is the Comedy Slab. I'm Adrian Lacey in the southeast of England. He is Shane in the Midlands. I was going to say nondescript. I meant secret, top secret part of the Midlands, just to keep all fan bases away. Anyway, it's been a bit of a scorcher down here today. Are you nice and warm where you are, Shane?
I'm in my pants as well, if that's what you're asking, and I think you are.
Not quite.
I've just, well, you know, you this subtle. I've dropped the camera. Oh, look at the pants that I had earlier. That's all I needed on Skype. Thank you very much, madam.
What's the one about hoovering in the nude?
Yeah, I was hoovering in the nude and I fell on this gentleman. Mel Smith and Griff Jones.
Yes, start as you mean to go on, dubiously. Anyway, if you're new to the show, you might actually decide it's not for you. But we're not consistently this awful. It might get better. Just stick with it. You never know. It could turn round. Well, that was... I'm looking at him looking at Skype. You just turned round.
That was a waffle. Did you hear that one go past then? Sorry. It's track tonight in our village tonight. So, be prepared.
I know you small villagers, you have these sort of festivals at this time of year, don't you?
Well, you can imagine my shock when they invited me and said, would I like to come along and meet the village people? And
don't say that when I'm trying to drink tea.
And I thought, I dressed up as well.
You thought your luck was in.
They all thought I was a telephone repairman by profession, right?
Well, stop professing it then.
And I thought, these guys haven't really made an effort.
Okay, right. Well, I think the show's been cancelled now, thanks to you. It was only a matter of time. We've got away with 155 episodes up to now, and this is episode 156. What is the Comedy Slam about if it's not about dubious opening remarks? Well, hopefully it's a bit more than that. We put a different comedy, be it TV, radio, or in this case, this week, a podcast, on the marble of virtuality, and we prod it about a bit, we dissect it, and we see what we make of it. And each of us, that's me and Shane, individually, with no pressure on each other, give a score out of 5, making, of course, when we add the two together, a score out of about 9.5, depending on how Shane's maths is going and how bad his sunstroke is today. Are we ready to rock? Just before I'd say, it is podcast this week, as I sort of made an allusion to. And if the term Fonejacker means anything to you, perhaps from Channel 4 in yesteryear, then you'll be familiar with the show we're putting on the slab. But each week we like to put a little bit of comedy news in front of said slab. And I'm going to throw to Shane something about, we're so young and we've got our finger on the pulse. This is cutting edge humour and news about Ronnie Corbett.
Yeah, and why not? Because
why not?
The interesting thing is, with Ronnie Corbett, this is one of the reasons why I thought this is worthy of note. This is really just a shameless plug for an ITV programme that's coming up very soon. But again, why not? You think, well, it's probably going to be worth a watch anyway. But do you remember the One Ronnie? They did a series called The One Ronnie, where it's just Ronnie Corbett after Ronnie Barker died.
Yes, I do.
And they got, all of the comedians of the day to work alongside him. And I think they were like forming a very orderly and long queue. To do that, because he was held in such high regard, and I think it's about time. They're saying there's a program called The Two Ronnies, Ronnie Corbett's Lost Tapes, and I think he's got some home movies and stuff like that in it, and telling the story about the guy. I read his autobiography. Actually, he's quite a fascinating chap, and his Scottish upbringing and all the rest of it. But there's a lovely story that goes along with this with Barry Cryer. Who always tells a fantastic story anyway. Saying, did you hear about the time that Ronnie Corbett hit Ronnie Cray, the East End
gangster
gang kingpin? He hit him in the face with a bread roll, apparently.
Of all the weapons.
It sounds like a sketch from The Two Ronnies, doesn't it, really? If you think of like little Ronnie Corbett, And
it does. How did that come about?
Big Ron Cray. He was on the stage, apparently. Ronnie Corbett was on stage. And because I don't know if you know, but the Crays were quite into the West End nightlife, weren't they? They were, Well, I was just thinking of Barbara Windsor being mates with them, and so there was a showbiz connection. Albeit rather grisly, given some of their
dastardly deeds.
But yeah, well, of course, which some said, were they known about at the time? Did they only come out afterwards or whatever? But yeah, I mean, they acquired a nightclub in the West End. I think it was called Esmeralda's Barn at the time in the 1960s, and so they kind of got the bug of meeting all the rich and famous and all the rest of it. So but my point is that they frequented clubs quite a lot. But apparently, it was in the Winston's Club in Soho in the 1960s. And Ronnie Corbett was on stage, and somebody threw a bread roll at him. So quick as a flash, he picked it up, and he threw it back into the audience, and it hit Ronnie Gray in the face.
God, not someone you want to get into a spat with.
Not really,
even if you've got the same name.
No. So, and because it was a dry bread roll, so he wasn't even trying to butter him up. Was the worst part about it.
Was that Barry Cry?
No, that was mine, actually. But Barry, you can have it.
Oh, very good, very good.
You're a legend.
Although, like a lot of your humour, I think it was rather stale.
Oh, very good, yeah.
And violence baguettes violence, remember that?
I love that one.
Well, but isn't that the case? Actually, now you mentioned it, Ronnie Corbett's dad was a baker, wasn't he? Didn't he come from a family of bakers in Scotland?
I remember him saying, I think he had a very austere upbringing, didn't he, in Scotland? Wasn't he brought up, am I thinking of somebody else, wasn't he brought up as a Scottish Presbyterian?
I thought you were going to say by Scottish wolves. I don't know. Yeah, I think quite an austere upbringing. Maybe that's what the humour was all about, as a reaction to that, a rebellion against his parents. So.
Anywho, it's on ITV if you want to go and have a look at the Ronnie Corbett tapes.
I think that might be worth a look. I'm a bit of a sucker for the behind-the-scenes films. Anyway, I suppose that's me now, is it? Because this was my choice to put on the slab of infamy or fame. Infamy. Has he got it in for him? Anyway, as you will have heard me say last week, if you've heard last week's show, episode 155, at the tail end of that, when we set the homework at the end of each show, one for another, take it in turns. As I was setting the homework, I said last week that I thought it was time I waded into the possibly choppy waters of podcast comedy, which used to almost be a contradiction in terms at one stage. But comedy, I think, is coming home. It's coming home. Comedy is coming home to podcasts. And the Fonejacker is one such example. So, as I alluded to at the top of this show, he was on Channel 4. Then, of course, there was the old prompt. What was the InVision?
Facejacker.
Facejacker,
yeah.
Of course it was.
Yeah.
Which was a follow-up to that. But Fonejacker was... well, it took me back to other sort of prank phone calls, even back to the Noel Edmonds days on the radio. So it's not exactly a new territory, but what is, I think, interesting about this one is that the artiste, Kayvan Novak, is just so adept at different personas, and he can move up and down the English and British social scale, and also he has a joint Anglo-Iranian roots, so he's pretty mean at, and he gets away with it, I think, at doing sort of impersonation for whom the English language isn't their mother tongue. So I'm bound to ask you, Shane.
We should come back to that, shouldn't we, whether he gets away with it or not? Because that was something I put on my notes that is a point of order, point of interest. So yeah, don't forget.
Yeah, well, the world's changed since his early Channel 4 days, which was around 2006 it started out, something like that. Anyway, yeah, my eternal question to you, as I've chosen a show, without giving too much away about how you did react to it, but you sounded, shall we say, it's not giving any secrets away because people can hear it in last week's edition, that you sounded quite upbeat about being set this as homework.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I got fond memories of them. I mean, I haven't watched all of them, and I haven't sort of been a dedicated fan. But yeah, I have recollections of it making me laugh out loud on more than one occasion. And, I can still remember. In fact, whenever I say to my wife, well, she'll do it to me as well, she'll say, what's this? Come on, talk to me. Terry Tibbs, talk to me.
Talk to me.
So it's invaded the consciousness. But yeah, no, I was quite upbeat, quite looking forward to it.
Okay, well, let's hope as it were, you follow through, or he follows through.
I hope not, because I need to clean on this evening. And
it's an unfortunate turn of phrase. It's all right. We can edit that out later on.
I don't know whether they've been pleased or not. They do, my podcast partner hopes that I follow through. It's going to be like that.
Yes, okay. Well, you've put a certain spin on it. I, of course, was referring innocently, as the day is long, and we're not far off the Midsummer Night's Dream, that I hope you would follow through and enjoy this as well. But anyway, we have, as we do each week, 2 audio clips from the show we put on the Comedy Slab. This is no exception. What to say about this particular one? I don't know. This one always tickled me. And, there's loads of quotable catchphrases. You've made reference to one. And we're about to hear, well, it's not just one catchphrase. It's sort of catch syllable that you'll hear coming up again and again. But essentially, as far as we know, it is as it sounds, completely off the cuff. Kayvan phones someone up. I'm not sure how much at random it is. Could be totally at random. But then he just ad-libs his way into and out of some interesting characterizations.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello. I'm calling from Internet Service Providings. I was wondering if you'd be interested in upgrading your providings.
What?
I'm calling from Internet Service Providings. You provide internets. I was wondering if you were wishing to upgrade your providings.
Our providing?
Yeah, providing. You know, for the internets?
Our providing?
Yes, providings.
No. No, maybe if you kind of got the words right, might have a conversation. But
The words writing for what?
don't you worry. I'm not giving you an English lesson, but cheerio.
Internet Service Providings. You don't want to faster internet?
But it's service providing.
That is the name of the companies.
Oh, you didn't say that.
Oh, I see. You're thinking you are correcting my Englishings.
Well,
That's not very nice.
That could still happen, yeah.
But that's not very nicings. So how fast is your internetings?
Did you ever watch Fonejacker?
Which ones?
Fonejacker.
What is that?
Google it. Put it on YouTube and have a laugh. See you later, mate. Bye.
Googlings.
I never know. And I was always like this with Noel. I can't believe you mentioned Noel Edmonds, because it's brought a whole load of memories flooding back as well from his gotchas and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But I never know when somebody kind of says that and you think, oh, have they rumbled them? I never know whether that's makes it better or worse.
I find this hilarious if it is as it seems. You've worried me slightly that I might, well, not that you said it in so many times, but I suddenly wondered, is it as it appears? I'm going to believe it is anyway. I guess before we forget and drift off down some side alley, could we have a headline, please, Shane?
Oh, yes, of course, yes. My headline is, I'm not Kayvan in.
Oh,
it's a Novak from me.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, dear. So to you, it's gone off, or the podcast doesn't match the quality, as you recall it, of the TV series?
I think, and I hesitate to use the word because you kind of think, what?
What? Oh, you haven't used it yet.
It's the writing.
What?
But of course,
I will say that in an ad-libbed show.
Yeah, but it isn't, is it? I mean, he goes into it with an idea of where he's going to go first of all, like a kind of rough structure, and then he'll go with it, you know. And I think his ability to go with it is still quite clearly as sharp as it ever was. But I just wonder whether I tell you what it felt like to me. It felt a little bit like if you were doing it for the TV, they would have recorded 10 times more material
and been 10 times more fussy.
Exactly, and picked the best from that 10 times more material. It felt like we heard the majority of what he'd done. That's what it felt like to me.
Well, I think it might have been done on a bit of a budget, but that of itself, I don't think has to be a bad thing, because actually, I mean, we can widen it out, or maybe we should start to do so now anyway. I can see the attraction for some artists, particularly if TV's not coming knocking particularly frequently, of being more in creative control. And they can put podcasts up there as and when it suits them. I mean, I think this is more formalised than that. It's got graphics from the show, as far as I can make out. But there are no credits on it. But I'm assuming it's copyright Kayvan Novak himself, and it's hosted by Acast, which is a podcast providings, if I may use that term. But they have sort of two levels. I dipped a toe into them. It may have changed since I last looked at it, but essentially you can just be hosted there, or you can get more involved in a co-production with Acast, which is why I credit them, because I don't know how much involved they've been. I mean, I see the website is actually credited to Acast. Which I think are a Swedish company, if I remember correctly, but I may not have remembered correctly.
You see, and the thing you mentioned there, talking about the artist self-publishing in a way. And again, I've never, until we started looking at these, I never really gave much thought to how important it is to have an editor in the process. And by editor, I mean, like a script editor. Yeah. Or a director who will, look at the material and say, well, that's the best bit there, and we need to do this and do it this way. And I think that's what it suffers from, is that it could have done with another pair of ears across it before. There's not a lot new, is there? I mean, there isn't a lot, and maybe that's what he's aiming for. That he's aiming for something that is a podcast, but is similar to the TV series. And it was interesting because as I often do, I looked at the reviews online, and somebody said, "Oh, it's even better as a podcast than it was on the TV." And I think I wish they'd have expanded on that, because how is it better as a podcast? And the only thing I could think of is that they could listen to it on the go or in the car or whatever. So
it might have been the portability, but on the other hand, sorry.
Or the fact that the graphical side of this has always been somewhat superfluous.
Although Fonejacker, less so, but of course, but even Fonejacker, because I haven't seen either of those for years, but the Channel 4 shows, I did enjoy the pictures. They were quite inventive, as I recall. I think it's slowly coming back to me. Didn't the Fonejacker that just uses sort of animation, cut up stuff that looked a bit lo-fi but was very effective? Yeah. And in fact, in some ways, you could say that's more powerful than Fonejacker. There's another thing that makes me think it's a bit lo-fi is the sound balance isn't brilliant, and I haven't tweaked it. I have my suspicions here because, dear listener, if you're listening on, say, a smartphone speaker, or certainly an iPhone, I know for a fact they squash the sound to try and get more out of this tiny speaker, or two tiny speakers if you've got a later model, I think. And in squashing it, it will even it out. It has other less pleasant side effects. I speak as I was going to say a former sound bore, but I suppose once a sound bore, always a sound bore.
I suppose, in a way, it is only a phone call, isn't it, the other side? But you're right. I mean, the level needs to be right. I mean, it's not about quality.
Is there any redemption, though? I thought you were fighting a smile, because I'm watching you on Skype, of course. While I was playing that clip, I thought you were trying to disguise the fact you were enjoying it. But have you just got a nervous tick round your mouth?
No. It was wind, and then all I could think of was you saying about not following through. And
so I'm actually funnier than Kayvan Novak, but only unintentionally.
It was pure unalloyed fear that I was feeling.
You were going to follow through. Well, so you were frightened to laugh.
Having said that, my cough's cleared up. I'm too frightened to do that now.
Have you had skid pan driving lessons?
Yeah. It has. Again, I think I suffer from when you laugh. I kind of, it's that kind of thing. Is it when you
suffer? Other people would see that as a good thing, not suffering.
No, in this context, sorry, yeah. But I mean, you often say, "Oh, I didn't like this," and then I've sat there, watched it with you, and now I find myself laughing, and I feel a bit like a fraud. And I think that's kind of one of the things that happens. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't. I mean, I didn't come away thinking, "Well, that's half an hour. I'll never get back." It wasn't that kind of feeling. But I was a little bit deflated and dejected by the fact that I kind of didn't hear anything new, and what I did hear didn't seem to be as good as my recollection. Now, I'm not saying it wasn't as good as what he used to do, because it could well be, but my recollection is distorted. Did you find that? Did you get that at all? That it kind of like there was nothing. It didn't take it forward in any way.
Now you mention it, yes, and I think I mean that might have been a fleeting thought I had, but and I should say that it's episodes 7 and 8. As we speak, there's only the one podcast series, although, of course, that may change if there is a clamour for more. But they're each 15 minutes or thereabouts, and so I thought I'd put 2 on the old marble. Yeah, comedy is a cruel business, isn't it? And it's almost worse. The more cutting edge you are the first time around, expectations are higher. Oh, well, he's going to push the envelope, or she's going to push it even more this time. And sometimes they're already at the limit of either what they want to do or what they can do. Or in the case of TV, where conventional TV and radio stations and channels, you're dependent on commissioners, aren't you? And so you've got to work to them. And if they give you a pot of gold, then, you are dancing to their tune, depending on how much artistic freedom they give you. But I do think, I mean, is it reasonable to expect him to push on to something ever more elaborate?
It would be a great opportunity, wouldn't it? Is that he's taken it to a new platform, and doing it in a slightly different way. I mean, I suppose it's as if he was doing a radio show now. So to not push it on, I mean, I don't know how many new characters, because when he saw the snapshot of as you say, episode 7 and 8, so I'm not sure whether there are any new characters in there. But I mean, internet service providing guy is a bit. Was well used before, wasn't it, in Fonejacker, and was a very established character. So, I something you said at the top of this podcast about how his voice characterizations are just so on the money, and he's consistent. And he was in something the other week that we slabbed, and we didn't even know it was him.
Oh, yes, and I've managed to forget what it was, but I did read it in the week.
I can't think of it, but I remember, and we both went, "What? That was I didn't even know it was him." It was incredible. So his voice, and there's almost like did you not get that kind of sense that he could do so much more, and we missed the opportunity to get that?
I think yes, actually that. But you're probably voicing a thought that I suppressed a bit. I mean, bottom line is, I was still laughing because we try and listen or watch to all these shows that we slab a second time. I was still laughing on the second time. And there have been, as regular listeners would know, there have been weeks after weeks sometimes where there's been barely a laugh when I've watched something, especially if it's in the genre smile com, which I'm always banging on about. Where the idea of eliciting laughing out loud moments doesn't seem to be particularly high priority for a lot of shows and writers and artists. So to that extent, it was a sort of a giggle success. But no, I think you're right. Moving to a new platform, particularly where you haven't got you're not limited by a commissioner, one assumes, unless Acast were, I don't think they would be, but if they happen to be a little bit limiting in terms of the steers they'd given. But basically, I think it would be sort of fill your boots and just push the envelope a bit from them if they were involved in a co-production. Yeah,
I mean, there were laugh out loud moments, and there's no question about it. I love the way his mind works. You can almost see that process, can't you, taking place where he's kind of going with the flow of it. And I mean, there was one bit where he was the environmental health officer. I don't know if that's the other.
No, that's not our next one,
but I mean, he was just. I mean, he could have been a real guy. He was just everything the way. And he said, and he was saying to the guy, and you will be forced to urder. And he turned it into It is stumbling into a word, and I just thought, he's just so clever, you know, in that sense. I mean, it's not all bad, and that's, you know, I don't want to give the impression that I kind of came away thinking, oh, well, that was rubbish, because it isn't. It's far from rubbish. But as you say, when the bar is high, you don't say, oh, I'm really glad that they went below my expectation.
No.
Tell me that your second clip is the bloke phoning the council to
Yes, it is. Don't give it away. Shall we do that now?
Oh man! Oh, you made my night. Honestly, this is funny. I thought that as soon as I heard this, I went into Angela and I said, "You've got to listen to this." I just thought it's brilliant piece of comedy.
But just a bit of warning, it is quite painful to hear as well as being hilarious.
Do you know, she made it for me, though. The person on the other end made it for me because
she just keeps it on the dial, but only just.
You just think you deserve this.
I thought I heard her saying or thinking, I don't deserve this.
Yeah.
Anyway, make up your own mind. You can be the judge.
How can I help?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello, yes. I can put bean in bin?
Pardon?
I can put bean in bin?
I don't understand what you're trying to ask.
I have bin, yes?
Yeah?
But I don't need it anymore, so I put in bin. But then when rubbish men, they come, they just think it's bin.
Okay, so you need to organise a bulky waste collection.
Bulky?
And you need to book a too big for the bin.
Too big? No, it's not too big for the bin. It's the same size as the bin.
Yeah, I know. But
it fits perfectly inside the bin. It's a bin.
I understand, but we don't. The only thing that we can collect in your bins are refuse bags.
Bags?
So if it fits in a refuse bag.
Yes.
Yeah, if it fits in a refuse bag, put the bin inside a refuse bag. If it's a small, very small one, then you can.
Oh, I put the bin inside the bag inside the bin.
I don't know what's difficult to understand here. So.
No, but you said for the
bin is a large bin, like a normal sized bin. It's organised for it to be collected.
But it's the same size as a bin.
Waste refuse.
But if it is just inside the bin.
Well, that's still classified as bulky waste.
But you said if it fits in the bag, then I can put the bin in the bag and then put the bag in the bin.
To me, the best bit was when he said, "If I put the bin inside the bin, when the bin men come, they're just to get a bin."
I thought she was very polite, considering how much pressure he's putting her under.
She wasn't happy at all, was she?
Well, she wasn't happy from answering the phone, if you actually listen. I had a feeling she might be an actress just waiting for her next audition. Wouldn't be the first person in that kind of role.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it made it the fact that she was like she was kind of. I mean, that now, if you could have done. I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe that's the answer, is that you can't do that. You know, you couldn't have the whole thing of that quality. But I just thought that was just fantastic. That was what I remember. That's how I remember it.
A great premise, isn't it? And of course, that's where it started, as you say. He might have an idea of the shape of it. It's pretty dead certain he's going to wind someone up.
I mean,
by pursuing that line.
If you contrast that with later on, there's a call where he does he calls a window cleaner and asks, "Is it?" I can't remember what his character's called. Is it Brian somebody or something like that?
I can't remember that.
It doesn't matter anyway. But I mean, where he phones the window cleaner and he thinks his wife's having an affair and he wants to come. And I thought that was the antithesis of the bin in the bag sketch, you know, or call.
Well, it didn't help that the window cleaner went with the idea. Said, "Yes, of course, I'll video your wife having an affair."
But he wasn't, was he? I mean, he was like kind of just, you know. I had this bloke phone up and I had a laugh with him and I said, you know, and he wasn't serious, was he? That was the impression I got anyway. I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, towards the end, you think, he's just bluffing it out. But I've felt he might be serious at one point, to the point of thinking it might be a sort of rerun of Confessions of a Window Cleaner, which is a cinematic masterpiece some people might be old enough to remember.
I've actually interviewed Robin Asquith.
For it was he.
He lives, actually. It's a really strange one. He lives on the island of Gozo.
Which is where?
Off the coast of Malta.
Isn't that where the Muppets are? Oh, no, it's Gonzo.
Gonzo you're thinking of, yeah. And he travels to the UK every year for about 3 or 4 months and do panto and that, and then make all his money and go back again.
Bit like the late John Noakes of Blue Peter fame. Didn't he do the same? He had a houseboat in Mallorca or somewhere.
Yeah, he lived in Spain.
And then he'd come back to Britain for panto season or something like that. Yeah, make
something
a few bob.
Like yeah. Anyway, back to the original point that you made at the start, or alluded to, this idea that when he does, because he does quite a lot of Asian voices, doesn't he?
Mm.
And as you rightly said, he's got Iranian, or if you want to be really old school about it, Persian heritage.
Oh yeah. Well, I think he uses that term, doesn't he, of himself? But
Persian, yeah, I think it's. I think a lot of people from Iran, because Persian was pre-Shah, wasn't it? I think, and that's in their country's history. Yeah. But he was born in Cricklewood, which
don't knock it.
I always think of as a comedy place in London. I couldn't find this, but did I dream this, or is it true that you remember the Goodies TV series? Weren't they based in Cricklewood?
I don't know about that. I mean, I do remember the little kitten knocking over what was then called the GPO Tower.
Kitten Kong.
Which is in the West End, of course.
Yeah.
You remember it well.
Who would forget
I don't
Kitten
know,
Kong,
but,
yeah?
I mean, didn't Alan Corran do his diaries supposedly from Cricklewood? And people make a play, and I've been guilty of it myself, Frankie Goes to Cricklewood and all of that, so playing on the idea it's not Hollywood, but it's our Hollywood.
Right. I've always thought of it as a comedy place in London. Anyway, so he was born in Cricklewood. So is it racist for him to do Asian voices then? I'm asking you like you're the arbiter of all things.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm not the dicky arbiter.
I mean, I don't think it is anyway. I don't think it's personally. I don't think it's racist to do a voice. To do a mimic of somebody else's accent. We've had this conversation before.
It certainly helps if you do it brilliantly, as I believe he does. And I think, I mean, for a posh white guy to do it, that's starting to feel a little old school. Although you could say, well, what's different there? Otherwise, I mean, impersonators couldn't do anything out of their own immediate environs, could they?
No, and it's gone a little crazy, hasn't it? Really, because like somebody said, it's acting. That's what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be
pretending to be someone else.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole premise, really. And if you don't do that, then it's all for lost, really. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm not asking you to answer it because it's a big topic. But I just thought it's interesting. It doesn't bother me. Does it wear well? Would it bother other people? I mean, I guess they are the professionally upset.
Yes.
People.
I didn't realise you could be paid for that. You must be coining it.
For what?
Well, you're just generally upset, aren't you?
I'm not professionally. I'm just a really enthusiastic amateur. I'm an enthusiastic amateur. That's
well, I was fooled. You're so good at it. I thought you were a pro.
No. Yeah, this is all spare time stuff. Really, I'm really quite placid for a living.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You work for environmental health. Is that true? Or?
Yeah. Yeah. As soon as she said, that was the other thing. As soon as she said, "Can I help you?" You knew she didn't want to, didn't you? You know what I mean? But,
well, it's the way she said it. It ain't what you say. It's the way you say it.
The one that confused me a little bit in all of the sketches, and I don't know whether you got confused by this, was that he phoned up a newspaper with a celebrity story.
Oh, that was weird. And the year. Are you going to pick up on the year? Like, that's what confused me.
No, the thing that confused me was that I thought, does this guy who's on this news desk for this newspaper, Celebrity News, whatever it is, did he really not know that he was talking about the Beatles?
Well, but the problem being that, and hopefully, dear listener, you'll get to hear all of these shows with a bit of luck and know what we're talking about. But he does say early on, this is a Welsh character of Novak's, who says, well, it was 1976. And so thereafter, I'm thinking, well, because he then gives clues away. There's 4 of them. They got mopped up. He could only be talking.
One had a big nose.
One of them was quite good looking. Yeah, you do find yourself thinking, which one's which? But anyway, but they weren't around together musically as a combo in 76. So I'm thinking, as a Beatles tribute act. So the whole premise of the gag fails because the setup fails.
I kind of, but because he didn't know who they were, so he wasn't sharp enough to then think, oh, well, they weren't together then. He kind of went over.
But it's not news anyway, is it? So the whole thing. I mean, presumably that's the joke. But
that's the joke, isn't it?
It gets confused by the years because. Well, why would you say 76 if you mean 66? That might be where it's lacking another pair of ears.
I think the whole idea was that he would say to this guy, like he'd spell it out for him, one had a big nose, one was a hippie, one was a good looking guy, and the other one was just, was just okay and played guitar and whatever. and so, and what did they play? Love Me Do, and so he like kind of spelled it out for him, almost inviting the guy to go, well, it couldn't have been the Beatles because they weren't together in 76. And then he would take it on from there.
Oh, right.
But because I think what happened was because the guy hadn't got a clue. He's
like, too young, isn't he?
Who was it? And he's going, oh, I don't know. Who was it? And I think because of that, I think that's where and that's what I mean. That's when I started to think, I wonder whether we're seeing, all of the material.
He's not doing enough takes. Yeah. As you said, the TV would have done 10 times as many and they would have found someone bright enough to say, hang on a minute, you're talking about the Beatles.
Well, of course, this is the week that Christopher Biggins did an interview, didn't he? And he said that he stopped doing panel shows. He said, because I just couldn't. He said, because they keep recording and keep recording to try and find something funny.
Oh, yeah. It's soul destroying.
Yeah. He said, it's just painful. He said, I just can't take it anymore. He said, we're just there for hours. He said, no, I've walked out on one. He said, I've just had enough. I went, I'm sorry, I can't do any more. Bye. But I thought, well, mate, it's better than coal mining. But there you are. That's each to their own, I suppose.
So has he left to go down a coal mine then?
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think he's now working a seam somewhere under Mid Wales. So.
Not everything is as it seems.
No.
With which dubious gag we must draw this to a close, this knockabout banter, and decide. Yes?
Sorry, can I just one more thing? We were just
what
saying
is it,
about
O'Connor?
O'Connor Minor. Last week, I mentioned, there are probably more, but I mentioned the three kind of podcasts, like there's the indie, the corporate backed, and the artist publisher, if you like, those kind of three.
I like that, yeah.
And how weird that I was looking at, it's somebody that we follow on Twitter, a company called Good Pods. It's like a podcast recommendation thing, and you're supposed to share the ones that you have with your friends and all the rest of it, and So I think we would be on there, by virtue of the fact that there's a podcast there. But they've started putting a switch on their app, so you can switch off the professional ones and just go to the indie ones, which is quite interesting, isn't it? So you can then, to thin the field, as it were, you just flick the indie switch on the app and it brings up just the independent ones.
How does it sense it? Are they all very badly sound mixed?
If it sounds like it was done in somebody's bathroom, it gets through and puts it into the indie category, yeah. Anyway, sorry, go on, you were saying.
No, I was trying to steer us to marks out of 5 each. Do you want me to go first? Because I have decided, of course.
I've decided as well, but yes, you are more than welcome.
I am going to give it 3 out of 5, and I think you might be giving it 2.
I am giving it 2.5, and for virtue of the fact that some of the things that you pointed out, that he's just great, and I didn't feel bitter and twisted about it. I just felt a little bit let down that I kind of thought it was going to be a bit better than it was. So
I reckon that is 5.5 out of 10. So just over half marks, 55%, if you will. See what you make of it, Dylan.
I was going to say I'd recommend it. I mean, if you listen to this podcast and you think, actually, I mean, it's an accessible one, isn't it? Because you can pick it up on the same place that you pick this up. Go and have a listen and see what you think and let us know. We're always interested to know what other people think as well. This is purely just our thoughts, quite obviously, on the podcast. Okay, so to the homework from you to me, which would be a good Beatles song in 1976. What is it? What are you putting on the big slab? Well, it's a new genre. You've talked about the, we all know about the sitcom. And what's the one you call the Smile-com? Or the, as I call it, the Misery-com. And how do you fancy a bit of Crimino Sci-Fi-com? Crimino Sci-Fi? Yeah. Well, immediately I'm trying to guess what it is, but It's a sci-fi police drama comedy. Pick the bones out of that one, Bertrand.
Sci-fi police drama comedy. I'm just trying to think. There can't be too many in that category, and I think if I know of one, that's probably it. But I can't think of it, of course, in the heat of battle. I
think this is, in fairness, I think this is probably the only one.
No, I'm sorry. I was thinking of no. It was a feature-length thing. I think it's probably because you might have made reference to Mel Smith and Griff Rhys-Jones. I got that the right way round.
Yeah.
Because they did a sort of a sci-fi, but it was a feature film, sci-fi comedy, but the aliens were a bit thick. Anyway, that's going way back when, and obviously not what you're talking about, which is...
I'm trying to think what that was. This is a program called... It's a Sky One commission. And it is called Code 404.
Alluding to Error 404 that some of us have seen on the interweb?
Exactly alluded. Yeah, exactly. Right. It stars Stephen Graham and Daniel Mays. It's co-written by Daniel Mays as well. You'll know these, but as soon as you see their faces, you'll go, I don't know the names.
I know Stephen Graham, thanks to him being in Time recently. Someone was recommending to me.
Yeah, he's one of these who crosses the barrier from. He's a great drama actor, and he can quite obviously nip across to comedy and do a bit of that as well. Fabulous looking cast. It looks really well made as well, and it's about a detective who's killed after a sting operation goes wrong. And the Metropolitan Police decide to bring him back from the dead as part of an experimental AI project. And hilarity ensues. I put the emphasis on
artificial intelligence, in case your intelligence is like mine after an early start.
So I thought, well, there's a new first series. So I thought, well, because we're all going, what? Let's go in for episode 1 and kick that one off. Code 404, episode 1 is on the Slab for next week.
Fantastique, and that's on Sky. Super duper. Well, on Twitter we are at Comedy Slab. Do join us there. And follow us, indeed. And also, we are at Comedy Slab. That's our Facebook page. If you could like that as well, give us a big old thumbs up. That'd be appreciated. Personal recommendations, and indeed recommendations via Zoom or any other proprietary brand of video conferencing will be welcome. However you get the message out there, we will love you. You will feel better about yourself and also your friends and families who you've recommended us to. I would hazard a guess are going to feel better about you and about life generally. That's a good, bold claim, isn't it? And also, if you could give us a nice, generous star rating on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, call it what you will, some Mac variant, that'd be good too. And a little bit of blurb about why you enjoy the show. Notice how I'm twisting your arm on that one. But many thanks indeed for that.
It's a big ask, isn't it, that one? Because I don't know whether you get these. I guess everybody does. These things where they say, can you fill in recently, whatever the service was, can you fill in a survey? To that? And you think, oh, go on, I will, I'll be kind. And then, like, 20 minutes in, you're thinking, am I on the payroll here or what now? What's going on?
You reminded me, though, our Environmental Health Commission representative, otherwise known as one of Novak's characters, did a feedback thing at the end of that call, if you remember that. And he said, what can you say? How many marks out of 5 would you give me for informativeness up to and including facts? It's a lovely line.
There was the thing that I liked about that one as well is that he completely did what he wanted to do. So he said, so I'll, what would you say was a 3? So I'll put you down for a 5. And would you be happy to be brought up by me again? And he went, no, not really. He went, I'll put yes then. And it's like, so maybe we should do that with.
Maybe I was a bit too much like that with my generous star rating.
Maybe we should do that and say, well, we'll just put what we think. We'll write it for you and post it off to you. Just let us know your name and we can stick it on there for you.
Or we'll hold the far end of the pen if you just move your hand around. Or figuratively.
I want to say something along the lines of, thank you very much for your company this week. Really enjoyed it. And I can't tell you how relieved I am that there has been no follow through despite Adrian D's doing his best to encourage one. But
You
I just
follow
think
through.
it all sounds a bit tacky, doesn't it, really?
Not like us at all, because we're such a class act.
Exactly,
Well,
yeah.
I was going to say that brings us to the close of another Bomedy Blab in the persona of Brian Badondi. So it's goodbye. Bye.